September 3rd, 2012. Medellín, Colombia. A butcher shop. A woman walks out, 70 years old, gray hair, reading glasses. She's holding a bag of meat. A motorcycle pulls up. 2 riders. No plates. The passenger raises a gun. 2 shots. 1 to the head. She falls. The motorcycle speeds away. The woman is dead before the ambulance arrives. Her name was Griselda Blanco, and 40 years earlier she had invented that exact method of assassination. The motorcycle hit. Quick, clean, untraceable. She had used it to kill dozens, maybe hundreds, in the streets of Miami, Medellín, New York, and now someone had used it on her. But Griselda Blanco wasn't just a killer. She was an architect. According to DEA estimates, at her peak in the late 1970s, she controlled 80% of the cocaine flowing into Miami. 80%. That's not a drug dealer, that's a monopoly. She didn't just smuggle drugs. She built the infrastructure, the routes, the distribution networks, the money laundering systems. She turned Miami into the cocaine capital of the United States, and she did it before Pablo Escobar became a household name, before the Medellín cartel became an empire, before anyone thought a woman could run a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise. According to investigators, Griselda Blanco made an estimated $80 million per month at her peak in the 1970s. That's over $2 billion per year in today's money. And she did it by treating murder like a business expense and cocaine like a product. This is the story of the woman who built Miami's cocaine empire, not with charm, not with luck, but with logistics, violence, and an understanding of supply and demand that would make any CEO jealous. This is history's wealth, where money tells the story of power. Griselda Blanco Restrepo was born on February 15, 1943, in Cartagena, Colombia, into poverty, extreme poverty. Cartagena in the 1940s was a city of extremes. Wealth on the coast, poverty in the slums. Griselda grew up in the latter. Her mother, according to later accounts, was involved in prostitution. Her father was absent. The neighborhood was violent. Survival wasn't guaranteed. It was earned. And Griselda learned early that the world didn't care about weakness. According to reports that have never been fully verified, Griselda committed her first crime at age 11, a kidnapping. The child of a wealthy family, held for ransom. When the family didn't pay quickly enough, according to the story, Griselda killed the child herself. Whether this is true or legend, we don't know, but it became part of her mythology. And in the world she would enter, mythology matters, because fear is currency. As a teenager, Griselda moved to Medellín, Colombia's second-largest city, a place where the line between legal and illegal was already blurred. She worked, she survived, and she learned that violence opens doors, that men underestimate women, and that underestimation is an advantage. In her early 20s, Griselda married Carlos Trujillo, a small-time criminal, a forger of documents. Together they had 3 sons, but the marriage didn't last. Trujillo was weak. According to those who knew her, Griselda had no patience for weakness. In the late 1960s, Griselda met Alberto Bravo, a drug trafficker, connected to smuggling networks moving marijuana and small amounts of cocaine from Colombia to the United States. They married, and Griselda entered the drug trade, not as a wife, as a partner. In the early 1970s, Griselda and Alberto moved to Queens, New York, to expand their operation. New York had demand, Colombia had supply, and the Bravos became the bridge. According to law enforcement reports, Griselda learned the business in New York: how to move product, how to collect money, how to avoid police, how to use violence strategically. But she also learned something else, that Alberto Bravo was stealing from her, skimming profits, hiding money, disrespecting her. In 1975, Griselda confronted Alberto. In Colombia, according to accounts, it turned into a shootout. Alberto was killed, shot multiple times. Griselda was wounded, but she survived, and she inherited the operation. According to investigators, this was the turning point, because Griselda didn't just take over a drug network, she redesigned it. She didn't enter the drug trade, she reorganized it. By the mid-1970s, Griselda Blanco had relocated to Miami, and she saw an opportunity. Miami in the 1970s was ideal for drug trafficking. Geography, only 200 miles from Cuba. 300 miles from Colombia, closer to South America than any other major U.S. city. Demographics: large Cuban and Colombian immigrant populations, easy to blend in, easy to recruit. Infrastructure: ports, airports, highways connecting to the rest of the United States. And perhaps most importantly, lax law enforcement. Miami was growing fast, police were overwhelmed, and corruption was easy. Griselda recognized all of this, and she built her empire accordingly. Before Griselda, most cocaine smuggling was done in large shipments, hidden in cargo, on boats, on planes, high risk, high reward, but also high visibility. Griselda innovated. According to DEA reports, she pioneered the use of human mules, people who would swallow cocaine-filled condoms, or wear specially designed clothing with hidden compartments. She opened a lingerie factory. According to investigators, the garments had false linings. Women would wear them through customs, carrying kilograms of cocaine. Airport security wasn't trained to look for it. And women, especially mothers traveling with children, were less likely to be searched. Griselda exploited every assumption, every bias, every gap in the system. According to analysis of her operation, Griselda built a vertically integrated supply chain. Step 1. Production cocaine was produced in Colombia by suppliers she had relationships with, often through violence or payment. Step 2. Transportation. The cocaine was smuggled into the United States via mules, via hidden compartments in luggage, via small planes flying under radar. Step 3. Distribution. Once in Miami, the cocaine was distributed through a network Griselda controlled. Street dealers, mid-level distributors, all paying a percentage to her. Step 4. Collection cash flowed back up the chain, collected by enforcers, counted, and prepared for laundering. Step 5. Laundering. The money was cleaned through real estate purchases, front businesses, currency exchanges, offshore accounts. According to estimates, Griselda was moving tens of millions of dollars per month, and the system worked because she controlled every link. But there was a problem: too much cash. According to investigators, at the height of her operation, Griselda's organization was bringing in $80 million per month in cash, small bills. The volume was staggering. Miami banks noticed. Suddenly, there were more $20 bills being deposited in Miami than anywhere else in the United States. The Federal Reserve noticed. They called it the Miami Bulge, an unexplained surge in currency, all traceable to one thing: cocaine. And Griselda was at the center. But money wasn't Griselda's only tool. Violence was. According to law enforcement estimates, Griselda Blanco was responsible for ordering between 40 and 200 murders. The exact number is unknown, but the method was consistent. Griselda is credited with inventing, or at least popularizing, the motorcycle assassination. Two riders, driver and shooter. They pull up next to the target. The shooter fires. They speed away, fast, mobile, hard to trace. According to Miami police, dozens of murders in the late 1970s and early 1980s followed this pattern, and most were linked to Griselda's organization. The violence wasn't random. It was strategic. According to analysis, debt collection. If someone owed money and didn't pay, they were killed, publicly, as a message. Competition elimination. Other traffickers trying to operate in Miami were eliminated. Griselda didn't share territory. Informant prevention. Anyone suspected of talking to police was killed. Immediately. Cash flow protection. Violence-insured money kept flowing. Debts were paid. Routes stayed open. In business terms, violence was overhead, a cost of doing business, and Griselda calculated it coldly. By the late 1970s, according to DEA estimates, Griselda Blanco controlled approximately 80% of the cocaine entering Miami. 80%. That level of market dominance is called a monopoly. Her operation employed an estimated 1,500 people: smugglers, dealers, enforcers, accountants. It was a corporation, with Griselda as CEO. And according to financial estimates, she was making $80 million per month, nearly $1 billion per year in the late 1970s. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $2 billion annually in today's dollars. She was one of the wealthiest criminals in the world. And she was a woman in a business run almost entirely by men. Griselda lived lavishly, mansions in Miami, luxury cars, jewelry, But according to those who knew her, she was also paranoid. She trusted no one. She moved frequently. She kept armed guards at all times. And she was ruthless with anyone who crossed her, including family. But empires built on fear. Eventually, fear everyone. By the early 1980s, Griselda Blanco's empire was under siege. Miami had become a war zone. Murders were skyrocketing. The cocaine cowboys era was in full swing, and federal authorities were under pressure to act. In 1982, the DEA formed a task force targeting major cocaine traffickers in South Florida. Griselda Blanco was at the top of the list. The DEA launched Operation Banco, a multi-year investigation into Griselda's organization. They used wiretaps, informants, surveillance financial tracking. According to reports, they followed the money, bank deposits, real estate purchases, currency exchanges, and slowly they built a case. But Griselda's biggest problem wasn't the DEA, it was her own people. As the pressure increased, members of her organization started cooperating, offering testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. According to court documents, several key lieutenants turned informant, providing details about smuggling operations, murder contracts, money laundering schemes. The walls were closing in, but the pressure wasn't just legal, it was personal. In 1982, Griselda's youngest son, Johnny, was killed, shot in a bar, by rivals. According to accounts, Griselda was devastated and enraged. She ordered retaliatory killings, but it didn't bring him back, and it made her more reckless. On February 17, 1985, DEA agents arrested Griselda Blanco in her home in Irvine, California, where she had been living under an assumed name. She didn't resist. According to reports, she was calm, almost resigned. She was charged with conspiracy to manufacture and import cocaine, conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Griselda faced multiple trials. In 1985, she was convicted of drug trafficking, sentenced to 15 years. In 1994, while still in prison, she was charged with 3 murders from the late 1970s. Prosecutors had witnesses, former associates willing to testify. She was convicted again and sentenced to an additional 20 years. Griselda spent nearly 20 years in federal prison. According to reports, she remained feared, even behind bars. Inmates knew who she was, guards knew who she was, and she maintained a level of respect through reputation. But her empire was gone. Her organization had fractured. Other traffickers had taken over Miami, the Medellín cartel, then the Cali cartel, then the Mexican cartels. The business had moved on without her. In 2004, Griselda was released from prison and immediately deported to Colombia. She returned to Medellín, the city where she had started. According to reports, she tried to maintain a low profile, but the narco world had changed. She was a relic, a legend, but no longer a player. For 8 years, Griselda lived quietly in a modest apartment with little money. According to neighbors, she seemed like an ordinary old woman, but the past never stays buried. On September 3, 2012, Griselda walked to a butcher shop, bought meat, and walked out. A motorcycle pulled up. 2 riders, 1 shooter. The method she had invented, used against her. 2 shots. She was dead instantly. The killers were never caught, but the message was clear. In the world Griselda had helped create, no one retires. She died the way she had lived, by the rules she had written. Griselda Blanco died in 2012, but her impact lives on. According to law enforcement historians, Griselda Blanco was a pioneer, not because she was the first woman in drug trafficking, but because she was the first to build an industrial-scale operation, the Miami Corridor. Before Griselda, Miami was a secondary drug market. After Griselda, it became the cocaine capital of the United States. The routes she established are still used today by Mexican cartels, by Colombian suppliers, by anyone moving drugs from South America to North America. The mule system, the use of human couriers, became standard. Cartels refined it, expanded it, but Griselda proved it worked. The motorcycle hit. Her signature method of assassination spread to Colombia, to Mexico, to Central America. It's still used today because it works. The business model. Griselda treated cocaine like a product. Supply, demand, distribution, cash flow. She was ruthless, But she was also organized, and that organization became the template for what came after. Griselda proved that gender was no barrier, not to violence, not to wealth, not to power. According to criminologists, her success challenged assumptions that women couldn't lead, that women couldn't be as ruthless as men. Griselda proved otherwise, but that's not empowerment. It's a reminder that the capacity for violence and greed is human, not gendered. Over the years, Griselda became a legend. The Black Widow, the Godmother, La Madrina. Books were written, documentaries were made. A Netflix series dramatized her life, and the legend grew. But the reality was simpler. She was a woman who saw an opportunity, who built a business, who used violence as a tool, who made billions, and who ultimately died the way most in that world do, violently, alone, forgotten by the system she helped create. Griselda's Miami operation was a proving ground for methods, for roots, for systems, and the cartels that came after learned from her. The Medellín cartel, Pablo Escobar, used Miami roots that Griselda had established. According to DEA reports, there was cooperation between them in the late 1970s. She paved the road with blood. Escobar just drove the trucks over it. The Mexican cartels. When Colombian cartels weakened, Mexican organizations took over, but they used the same roots, the same methods, the same understanding. That cocaine is a product, and America is the market. But there's another legacy, the violence. According to estimates, the cocaine cowboys era, which Griselda was central to, resulted in hundreds of murders in Miami alone. Innocent people caught in crossfire, rival traffickers eliminated, informants killed, and Griselda's own family paid the price. 3 of her 4 sons were killed by rivals, by the business, by the world she created. She died alone, shot in the street. Like so many others, the empire she built didn't protect her. In the end, it consumed her. Today, Miami is still a major drug corridor. The methods have evolved, the players have changed, but the fundamentals remain. Supply in South America, demand in North America, and a route in between. Griselda didn't create that, but she industrialized it, and that industrialization is her legacy. Griselda Blanco was not a hero. She was not a victim. She was an architect of a system that moved billions of dollars, of a network that employed thousands, of a method that killed hundreds. She proved that women could lead, but not in a way anyone should celebrate, because leadership without ethics is just power, and power without accountability is just violence. Griselda built an empire, but empires built on blood don't last. They consume, they destroy, and eventually they turn on their creators. She made an estimated $2 billion in her career, according to DEA calculations. She controlled 80% of Miami's cocaine market at her peak. She pioneered smuggling techniques still used today, but she died on a street, shot by a method she had invented, with no money, no empire, no protection. The system she helped create had moved on without her, and the roots she established, they're still there, carrying drugs, generating billions, funding cartels, and destroying lives. Griselda Blanco's story isn't about crime, it's about capitalism in its most brutal form, where the only rule is profit, and the only cost that matters is getting caught. She understood that better than most, and she played the game better than almost anyone until the game played her. Subscribe to History's Wealth, where we expose the architects of criminal empires, the systems they built, and the money that still flows through them. Because in the end, history doesn't repeat itself. It teaches, and those who listen survive.